7 years of marriage to Natalie had taught me many things, but nothing prepared me for that night. What began as a loving partnership slowly morphed into something cold after her promotion. I still remember her exact words when I tried to kiss her that evening. "Not tonight, or any night, Chuck. I just do not feel that way anymore." The pain was immediate, but so was my resolve. That moment forced a decision that would transform our marriage in ways neither of us expected. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like button if you have ever felt taken for granted in a relationship. Natalie and I met during our junior year of college. I was studying engineering while she pursued her business degree. We connected at a mutual friends party, and I was immediately drawn to her ambition and intelligence. She had this infectious laugh that would light up an entire room. Our early relationship was passionate and exciting. We spent hours talking about our dreams and future together. I wanted to design innovative structures, while she aspired to climb the corporate ladder in marketing. We complemented each other perfectly. After graduation, I proposed on a hiking trip to her favorite mountain lookout. She cried when I got down on one knee, and the joy in her eyes when she said yes is a memory I still treasure. Our wedding day 7 years ago was everything we had hoped for, a celebration with friends and family who believed in our love. The first few years of marriage were blissful. We moved into a small apartment, saved money, and built our life together one step at a time. When an opportunity came up for both of us in Seattle, we took the leap. I found a position at an engineering firm, and she landed a role at a growing marketing agency. We bought our first home, a modest 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood with good schools nearby. We talked about having children someday, but agreed to establish our careers first. Everything seemed to be falling into place, exactly as we had planned. 2 years ago, Natalie received a promotion to senior marketing manager. I was incredibly proud of her. We celebrated with champagne, and I surprised her with a weekend getaway to Vancouver. She was excited about the new responsibilities, though concerned about the increased workload. I assured her we would figure it out together. I believed in her abilities and wanted to support her success. Little did I know how significantly this promotion would change our relationship. The first few months were an adjustment. Natalie started working longer hours, often coming home exhausted. I picked up more household responsibilities, making dinner most nights and handling the cleaning. I did not mind. I understood she was proving herself in her new role and needed my support. But gradually, those long hours became the new normal rather than a temporary situation. Our conversations grew shorter. Natalie would come home, eat quickly while checking emails on her phone, then either continue working or collapse into bed claiming exhaustion. Weekend outings became rare, as she often needed to catch up on sleep or prepare for the upcoming week. I suggested date nights to maintain our connection, but they were frequently canceled due to last-minute work emergencies. I tried to be patient and understanding. I brought her coffee in the mornings, left encouraging notes in her lunch bag, and tried not to complain about the growing distance between us. But the rejection started taking its toll. What began as "not tonight, honey, I am too tired," gradually evolved into irritated sighs and eye rolls whenever I expressed interest in intimacy. For our anniversary, I planned an elaborate evening. I made reservations at the upscale restaurant where we had celebrated her promotion, bought her favorite flowers, and even arranged for a cleaning service to make the house spotless. When she texted that she would be working late, I pushed dinner back an hour. I was determined to make the night special. Natalie arrived home nearly 2 hours late. The candles I had lit were almost burned down. She apologized half-heartedly while checking her phone notifications. Throughout dinner, she seemed distracted and uninterested in my attempts at conversation. Still, I remained hopeful that the evening could be salvaged. After dinner, I suggested we open a bottle of wine at home. She agreed, though without enthusiasm. At home, I put on the playlist from our dating days and sat beside her on the couch. When I leaned in to kiss her neck, she stiffened. I pulled back, confused by her reaction. That is when she said the words that would change everything. "Not tonight, or any night, Chuck. I just do not feel that way anymore." I felt as though she had physically struck me. Not just a rejection for the evening, but a declaration that our physical relationship was over completely. When I asked what she meant, She explained with cold efficiency that she no longer felt sexual attraction toward me. She suggested we could continue our marriage as partners and friends. As I sat there stunned, she added that many marriages evolve this way, and I should just deal with it. An argument erupted. I asked if there was someone else. She was insulted by the accusation. I asked if it was something I had done wrong or could improve. She sighed and said it was not about me, just her changing feelings. When I questioned whether she still loved me, she claimed she did, just differently now. None of her answers provided any real clarity or path forward. That night I slept in the guest room for the first time in our marriage. I lay awake for hours replaying her words and considering my options. Divorce seemed drastic, yet the thought of living in a loveless marriage filled me with dread. By morning I had not reached any conclusion, but the pain had hardened into something closer to resolve. Something needed to change, and if Natalie would not work with me, I would have to make changes on my own. The week following our anniversary was one of the most difficult of my life. I went through the motions at work, unable to focus on projects that normally excited me. Evenings at home were tense and quiet. Natalie and I orbited each other like distant planets, exchanging necessary information, but little else. I found myself waiting until she went to bed to come upstairs, avoiding any situation that might lead to another painful conversation. That Saturday, I met my best friend James for beer at our usual sports bar. James and I had been friends since freshman year of college, and he knew both Natalie and me well. After my second beer, I finally unloaded everything that had happened. James listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "Man, that is harsh," he said when I finished. "Have you thought about counseling?" I explained that Natalie had dismissed the idea when I brought it up, saying there was nothing wrong with her feelings changing and that I was overreacting. James shook his head. "So what are you going to do? File for divorce?" The question hung between us. Was that my only option? I do not know yet, I admitted. I still love her, but I cannot just accept this new normal either. On the drive home, I had a realization. Begging Natalie to want me again was not going to work. Neither would sulking or giving her the cold shoulder. If she no longer found me attractive or interesting, perhaps I needed to become the best version of myself, not for her, but for me. Instead of pouring all my energy into trying to please someone who had clearly checked out, I could redirect that time, attention, and resources into myself. The next day, I researched gyms in our area and signed up for one with good personal training options. I had let myself go somewhat over the years, prioritizing work and home responsibilities over fitness. My trainer Dave was a former military guy who did not accept excuses. We set up a schedule for 3 sessions per week, early mornings before work. I also opened a separate bank account. Natalie and I had always maintained a joint account, but I calculated roughly how much I had been spending on date nights, gifts, and little surprises for her over the past year. That money would now go toward my personal development fund. Finding a therapist was next. Through my company's employee assistance program, I connected with Dr. Marshall, a straight-talking counselor who specialized in men's issues and relationships. During our first session, I expected him to immediately push for couples counseling. Instead, he focused on helping me process my feelings and establish healthy boundaries. "It sounds like you have been making your wife's happiness your responsibility," he observed. "How about we work on rebuilding your sense of self first?" The physical transformation began slowly. Those first few weeks at the gym were brutal. Every muscle ached and getting out of bed for 5:30 a.m. Sessions required more willpower than I knew I possessed. Dave pushed me hard, but kept me motivated with measurable goals. By the end of the first month, I could see small changes. My posture improved and I had more energy throughout the day. I overhauled my diet, cutting out the fast food lunches and excessive carbs that had become my norm. I learned to meal prep on Sundays, preparing healthy options for the entire week. Within 2 months, I had lost 15 pounds and needed to buy new pants. By 3 months, friends at work were commenting on the change. Natalie, surprisingly, hardly seemed to notice. She was so wrapped up in her own world that my gradually transforming physique barely registered. When she did occasionally remark that I was looking better, it was with the casual observation one might make about a distant acquaintance. The emotional transformation proved even more significant than the physical one. Dr. Marshall encouraged me to reconnect with old friends and pursue interests I had abandoned. I reached out to former engineering school buddies, discovering that several lived in the Seattle area. We began meeting monthly for dinner, rekindling friendships that had once been important to me. One of those friends, Alex, invited me to join him rock climbing at an indoor gym. I had never tried it before, but found I enjoyed the challenge and focus it required. Soon I was climbing twice a week and planning weekend hiking trips with my new climbing friends. For the first time in years, I had activities and people in my life that had nothing to do with Natalie. I had always been interested in photography, but never made time to pursue it seriously. I signed up for a weekend class and invested in a decent camera from my personal development fund. Soon I was spending Sunday mornings capturing Seattle's landscapes and architecture, finding joy in creating something beautiful just for myself. Each week in therapy, Dr. Marshall helped me understand how I had gradually made Natalie the center of my universe, inadvertently putting unhealthy pressure on our relationship while losing parts of myself. We worked on setting better boundaries and recognizing my own needs as valid. You cannot control whether she returns to the relationship fully, he told me, but you can control how you spend your energy and who you become. The financial redirection was perhaps the most practical aspect of my plan. I reviewed our credit card statements from the past year, calculating exactly how much I had spent trying to rekindle our romance. Expensive dinners, weekend getaways, gifts, all attempting to solve a problem that money could not fix. Now those funds went into my personal account. I used some of that money to take an online course in specialized engineering software, increasing my value at work. I also started a small consulting business, helping local contractors with technical issues on weekends. Not only did this bring in additional income, but it also gave me professional satisfaction I had been missing. When a colleague mentioned a promising investment opportunity, I had the funds available to participate. For the first time, I was making financial decisions based on my future, not just on trying to please Natalie or save our marriage. Throughout these changes, I maintained my responsibilities at home. I still did my share of chores and contributed to our joint expenses. But I no longer went out of my way to make elaborate dinners when Natalie worked late or buy thoughtful gifts that went unappreciated. I was polite, but no longer bent over backward trying to earn her affection. It took nearly 3 months before Natalie began to really notice the changes. I had lost 30 pounds, built noticeable muscle, updated my wardrobe, and developed a quiet confidence that had not been there before. But more significantly, I was no longer waiting around for her attention. One Friday evening, she arrived home at a reasonable hour for once and seemed surprised to find me getting ready to go out. "You are going somewhere?" she asked, watching me button a new shirt she had never seen before. "Yeah, meeting some friends from engineering school for dinner and drinks. You never mentioned that," she said, with a slight frown. "I did not think you would be home," I replied honestly. "There are leftovers in the fridge if you want them." As I headed for the door, she called after me. "When will you be back?" "I am not sure." "Do not wait up." It was a small moment, but I could see the confusion on her face. For years I had structured my life around her schedule and needs. Now, I was making plans without checking with her first, and it clearly unsettled her. The following week, she commented on my appearance as I returned from the gym. "You look different," she said, studying me with new interest. "Have you lost weight?" "About 30 pounds, I replied casually. "Why did not you tell me you were on a fitness kick?" I shrugged. "You have been busy." It did not seem important to mention. That weekend, I was packing my hiking gear when she wandered into the garage. "Another hike?" she asked. "That is the 3rd weekend in a row. We are trying to hit all the best trails before the weather turns," I explained. "Who exactly is we?" she pressed. "Just some friends. Alex, whom you met at the company picnic last year, his brother Mike, and a couple guys from the climbing gym." I could see her processing this information, realizing there were now people in my life she knew nothing about. She lingered, asking more questions about my plans than she had in months. The first real attempt to regain control came when she suggested we take a weekend trip to Portland, coincidentally planned for the same weekend as a photography workshop I had already paid for. "I cannot that weekend," I said. "I have the workshop. Cannot you reschedule?" she pushed. We have not gone away together in ages. I could say the same about many date nights and events you have canceled for work, I pointed out calmly. This is important to me, and I have already paid for it. She was not used to being refused and did not hide her irritation. Later that week, she tried a different approach, greeting me in lingerie when I returned from a climbing session. After months of rejection, the sudden sexual interest seemed suspicious rather than enticing. I need to shower, I said, moving past her toward the bathroom. I can join you, she suggested, reaching for my arm. I think we should talk first, I replied. This seems sudden after you made your feelings clear on our anniversary. Her face fell and she wrapped her arms around herself protectively. I thought you would be happy that I am making an effort. I appreciate the gesture, I said honestly. But intimacy is not just physical. We have a lot to work through before I can be vulnerable with you again. I was respecting the boundary she had established, but clearly she was now ready to change the terms without addressing the underlying issues. For the first time, I was the one saying not tonight. Our dynamic shifted most noticeably at her company holiday party. In previous years, I had been the supportive husband who stood quietly by her side as she networked. This year was different. I arrived in my best suit, now fitting perfectly after my physical transformation. Throughout the evening, several of her colleagues commented on my changed appearance, and I found myself engaged in interesting conversations rather than just playing the role of Natalie's plus one. At one point, I was deep in conversation with her colleague Amanda about sustainable architecture, a shared interest we discovered. Amanda was clearly impressed by my knowledge, and our conversation flowed easily. From across the room, I noticed Natalie watching us, a strange expression on her face. She quickly made her way over, inserting herself into our conversation and placing a proprietary hand on my arm. I see you have met my husband, she said to Amanda, with an overly bright smile. Yes, we were just discussing the new carbon-neutral building downtown, Amanda replied. Chuck has some fascinating insights about the engineering challenges. He is very smart, Natalie agreed, tightening her grip on my arm. Would you excuse us? I need to introduce him to the new marketing director. As she pulled me away, I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm. That was rude, I said quietly. We were having an interesting conversation. She was flirting with you, Natalie hissed. No, she was discussing professional interests with me, I corrected. And even if she was being friendly, since when do you care? Natalie stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. The rest of the evening she stayed close, introducing me proudly to colleagues, and touching me more than she had in months. I remained polite, but maintained my boundaries, no longer desperate for crumbs of her attention. The real confrontation came 2 weeks later. I returned from a Saturday photography outing to find Natalie waiting for me, eyes red from crying. Are you having an affair? She demanded as soon as I walked in. The question took me completely by surprise. No, I am not. Then, why are you never home? Why are you suddenly so concerned about your appearance? Who are all these new friends? Why were you talking so intently with Amanda at the party? I set down my camera bag and faced her directly. I am not having an affair, Natalie. I am building a life that does not revolve around being rejected by my wife. Her face crumpled and fresh tears spilled over. What is that supposed to mean? It means after you told me not tonight or any night I had a choice to make, I explained calmly. I could beg you to want me again. I could leave, or I could redirect my time, attention, and resources into becoming a better version of myself. I chose the third option. I described how her words had forced me to reevaluate our relationship and my own self-worth. I explained the changes I had made not to win her back, but to build my own happiness and fulfillment. So this is all to punish me, she asked, anger flashing through her tears. This has nothing to do with punishing you, I replied. This is about me refusing to remain in a one-sided relationship where my needs do not matter. You made your feelings clear, and I am respecting that by no longer pressuring you for intimacy. But I am not going to put my life on hold or continue pouring all my energy into someone who has checked out. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. For the next hour, she alternated between tears, apologies, and desperate promises to change. She swore she did not mean what she had said, that she had been overwhelmed with work and taken me for granted. She begged for another chance, insisting she would quit her job if necessary to save our marriage. I listened without interrupting, but when she finally ran out of words, my response was measured. Trust and intimacy cannot be rebuilt in a day, Natalie. Your words hurt me deeply, but they also woke me up to how unhealthy our relationship had become. If you are serious about rebuilding, we need professional help and consistent effort from both of us over time. The weeks that followed brought a flurry of attempts to win me back. She cooked elaborate meals I once would have been thrilled to come home to. She bought tickets to events and planned date nights. She initiated physical affection at every opportunity, but each gesture felt like too little, too late, a panicked response to losing control rather than genuine reconnection. When she suggested we simply go back to how things were before I had to be firm, "That is not possible," I explained. "I am not the same person I was before, and going backwards is not an option. We need to build something new if we are going to move forward together." After months of individual therapy, I finally felt ready for the boundary-setting conversation we needed to have. I asked Natalie to sit down with me one evening after dinner. "I need to be clear about where I stand," I began. "I am not planning to leave our marriage, but I am not willing to settle for the way things were either. I need a partner who respects me, values intimacy, and puts as much effort into our relationship as I do." I outlined my expectations moving forward, from better communication to shared priorities and mutual respect. I suggested couples therapy with a professional who could help us navigate this new territory. "If you are serious about rebuilding our marriage, I am willing to try," I told her. "But I need to know that this is not just a temporary reaction to me pulling away. Real change takes consistent effort over time." Natalie listened with tears in her eyes but nodded in agreement. The following week we had our first appointment with Dr. Dumais Garcia, a couples therapist, recommended by my individual counselor. The sessions were often difficult and emotional, bringing to light patterns and assumptions that had damaged our connection over time. In our third session, Natalie had a breakthrough moment when she finally understood how her rejection had affected me. "I never thought about how my words would impact you long term," she admitted. "I was so wrapped up in my own stress and ambition that I used you as an emotional punching bag. I took for granted that you would always be there, no matter how I treated you." For my part, I acknowledged that I had enabled some of her behavior by never setting proper boundaries. "I thought being a good husband meant always putting your needs first and never complaining," I explained. I let resentment build instead of addressing problems directly. The rebuilding process was slow and not always linear. We established weekly date nights that were sacred, not to be canceled for work. We created rituals of connection like Sunday morning coffee on the porch, where we would check in with each other without distractions. Natalie made significant changes at work, setting better boundaries with her time and energy. She started seeing her own therapist to work through her tendency to use work as an escape from emotional intimacy. I continued my personal growth journey while making space for our relationship to heal. Physical intimacy returned, gradually built on a foundation of emotional connection rather than obligation or manipulation. We learned to be vulnerable with each other, again sharing fears and desires that had gone unspoken for too long. The most important lesson I learned through this painful journey was the value of self-respect. By redirecting my energy into personal growth instead of trying to please someone who had checked out, I not only improved my own life, but inadvertently saved our marriage. I realized that making another person your entire world creates an unhealthy dynamic that ultimately damages the relationship. Sometimes stepping back and focusing on yourself is exactly what allows true feelings to surface. Natalie needed to see what she stood to lose before she could appreciate what she had. The investment in myself paid dividends regardless of what happened with our marriage. I discovered new passions, rebuilt friendships, improved my health, and developed a stronger sense of self. These changes made me a better partner, but more importantly, they made me a more complete person. Our relationship continues to evolve stronger now, but fundamentally different from what it was before. We approach each other with more respect and less expectation, understanding that a healthy partnership requires ongoing effort and attention from both sides. Have you ever had to reinvest in yourself to save a relationship or recognize your own worth? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life lessons. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, share it with them. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember that sometimes redirecting your path is exactly what leads you back to where you needed to be.